All right, Ryan. Dan Campbell gets his first preseason win as Lions head coach. They went 0-3 last year and 0 whatever the year before that, and the year before that because they haven't won in the preseason since 2018. The Lions did rest the majority of the starters because the first stringers were going back and forth in the camp against the Colts, so they had some time against the Colts. So it was time to see the guys that are trying to make their way onto the final 53-man roster. What'd you think of the performance by the second and third stringers?
I mean, there wasn't anything I guess you could really take away. They won the game, which was cool, but you could say they only won the game because the Colts decided to go for two because of the preseason game, right? If it's the regular season, they probably kick that extra point and just take it into overtime, and then we're not going to know what happens. The biggest thing that I saw from the second unit for the Lions was the offensive line. So we know that their offensive line starting unit's going to be really good, like the five guys that they have up front. But a lot of these guys that are backups this year had to start last year because our offensive line missed so much time. So those are guys who, while you don't feel good if they're starting for you, as like rotational offensive line pieces, it's pretty good. You get a lot of... You've heard a lot of talk from everybody about how good the Lions offensive line can be this year, and they are only referring to those five guys who are on the starting unit. But it's really kind of top to bottom with the depth that they have on the offensive line is when those guys go out and they need a breather, or God forbid, they have to miss some time. You just hope it's not 3 or 4 at a time like it was last year. And I think the guys behind them can get the job done as well. I think it's just a really solid group overall. And I know you have some numbers here for how the Lions were able to dominate on the ground, and a lot of that was due to just that offensive line, because these are guys again who got a lot of playing time last year and who were who are pretty good, especially as depth pieces in the NFL.
No, I'm absolutely with you. I mean, that's to me, one of the most important things, and it doesn't ever get talked about. Line play in general doesn't really get talked about, especially the offensive side of the ball. So to see that our second and third string linemen are holding their own, and then some, granted, again, they are going against the second and third string defense of the Colts. But against this, Colts defense, they racked up 174 yards on the ground, and the defensive line against the Colts offensive line, they only allowed 30 yards on the ground. So obviously the Lions won that battle. I don't care if it's second string or third string. Having guys come in and play well and keep that confidence, because you know it as well as I do. Offensive linemen go down. It just happens. Everyone's running by their legs. They're rolling over their ankles. They're twisting up their knees. All sorts of stuff happens to O-linemen. And so you need to have a plethora of them. We're going to talk about a team later on that absolutely doesn't, and it's looking like a big problem for them. I'm glad the Lions don't have this problem. I'm glad that we have this abundance of offensive linemen that should be able to help us achieve our goals in the future. I don't have that much hope for this year. I'm not having any crazy expectations for this year. I want to see growth. I want to see Dan Campbell's, community grow and following what he brings to the table, and the team following suit. And so I want to see growth this year, and we need to have an offensive attack as far as the ground is concerned to have that offensive growth. And to have an abundance of linemen who are doing their job is exactly what I want to see as we inch closer to the regular season.
Yeah, and like you just said, you hope none of them get hurt. You, of course, hope none of the starters get hurt. You hope none of the backups get hurt. But a lot of the optimism that is coming on for the Lions is kind of being like everybody's darling pick to hit their over in wins and possibly even win the NFC North. It's all due to that offensive line. Nobody's pointing to the defense and saying, hey, this is the reason that they're going to win. It's all about the offense and the offensive line, and then the running game, and then the running game that could potentially open up the passing game where you have St. Brown and Chark and Hawkinson and these other guys. But all of that success will stem from the trenches, right? The guys up front who are protecting Jared Goff, who are creating holes for DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, maybe Jamar Jefferson if he ends up making the team here. But it's everything that the Lions do this year. If they have any success at all, it's all going to be based on how the offensive line plays.
Yeah, I think that's been fairly evident through the first two preseason games. Our secondary is god awful and is going to be the reason that we don't win as many games as all of the Lion hopefuls are saying. We're going to blow games defensively. Quarterbacks are going to have field days against our secondary as long as the quarterback's offensive line can hold up to our defensive line. And if that happens, and it will happen, obviously, but when that happens, wide receivers are going to have a whole lot of room to run because our cornerbacks, our safeties, they're not up to par. Not in the NFL, not the way that we're playing this year. I haven't seen that much from Okudah or Harris in this preseason to make me think otherwise. The one bright spot I have seen is Kirby Joseph, and it's not so much in coverage. The man's just active. He, led the team in tackles in the first preseason game. He was second in tackles in the second preseason game. From a rookie, that's exactly what I want to see. Get busy, get active, chasing after people, taking people down. So at least we have a little bit of something to have some hope on as far as the future is concerned. But the current guys doing their job right now, none of them are impressive whatsoever in the secondary, and it's going to be a huge reason why the Lions are not that good this year.
Okudah's, he kind of looks like he's cooked now, and you hate to say that because he really hasn't had a chance to play in any of these NFL games, but he just doesn't look good whenever he's out there. And even if you can have somebody like Aurier, but like emerge to be like Darius Slay or something, or at least like Darius Slay was here. When Slay was here, you had a decent secondary. You had Glover Quinn back there. You had there's another safety whose name escapes me, but like he was pretty good. One of I think Justin Coleman was here the same time that Darius Slay was here. So like you had a decent secondary. It wasn't great by any means. But I'm saying that to say, even if Aurier like ends up being that lockdown corner, like that cornerback one, whatever. Like, so what? People just aren't going to throw to his side of the field, and everywhere else is still probably going to be open because the Lions just don't seem like they have any talent back there at all. And it's something I'm sure they're probably going to address in the draft, addressed in next free agency cycle, but for this year it's just not going to happen. And with how pass happy the NFL is, it's kind of a death sentence if you have a bad secondary.
Are there any teams out there with like a plethora of secondary players and there's just a few are going to make the practice squad? Maybe we can make a trade. We'll give them Kennedy and they give us a secondary player.
And not, just right. Obviously, not great if he's getting cut, but I'm sure he's better than Okudah, probably even Will Harris too.
I mean, even Aurier, like, I don't think quarterback's going to be shying from going, on his side of the field. I don't think he's that good of a player where the quarterback's like, no, I'm not throwing that way. Like,
I think he can get there. I think he's a dog. Got that dog in him.
I mean, I hope you're right. I definitely hope you're right. So the O-line looked good. The secondary looked bad. It's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is secondary, the second and third team guys and a couple of guys trying for that, for that starting spot, including Harris and Okudah, going up against second stringers and third stringers for the Colts, and they still couldn't get stopped. So God, I don't want to watch when we're on defense. I'm gonna be checking out something else when the Lions are on defense during the games this season because it's just for only about 3 minutes anyway, because that's about as long as it's going to take for the opposing offense to score on our secondary. God, is it bad. But we do have some, health and wealth in certain areas, wide receiver being one of them. And with Kennedy kind of throwing his name into the hat, throwing his name into the ring for one of these positions, 100-plus yards in game one, 2 touchdowns in game two. Again, this is against not starters. But, Ryan, do you think Kennedy is going to be around in a couple weeks?
I don't know. So I was looking at Kyle Meinke's 53-man roster prediction. He still had Kennedy on the outside looking in. And then I was listening to 97.1 earlier this week, and a caller brought up a really good point where he was like, this is not like Tom Kennedy is not some undrafted free agent, and this is his first year with the Lions. He was on the team last year. He just wasn't any good, so he didn't play in front of any of the wide receivers in front of him. And it's, of course, different between the preseason and the regular season. I just don't know. I think I would like to see it because I don't think Quintez Cephus is that good, but you could convince me that Cephus is still better than whatever Kennedy is. I do like what I've seen out of Kennedy, and I would like him to be on the roster over a guy like Cephus. I don't think that's going to happen. It's one of those, real 50-50 roster spot battles, in my opinion, who's ever going to be the 6th or 7th wide receiver, whatever it is, right? Just the last wide receiver spot on this team. I think Cephus still probably does have the edge, only because he's done it in actual NFL games, at least more so than Kennedy has. And, Kennedy, it's not like, the dude's 26 years old. Like, I don't know that he all of a sudden just turned a leaf and, like, is now an NFL caliber receiver or something. Again, it's not like we're talking about a guy who's 21 or 22 and was coming from some school that nobody ever heard of. Like, he's been around. He just hasn't stuck, and it's probably a reason for it.
Okay, then on the running back side of things, we know who our 1-2 are. We know it's Swift. We know it's Williams. 3, and possibly 4, is Reynolds and Jackson. Jackson took advantage of this game. He looked great in this game, in this past game against the Colts. Averaged over 7 yards a carry, made the most of his time on the field. Do you see Jackson leapfrogging Craig Reynolds for the 3rd running back slot? And if not, do you think there's a chance the Lions go with 4 running backs?
I think I would give it to Jackson, only because, again, kind of like what I just said about Cephus. Like, Jackson has, done it more or less in the NFL. Last year when he was with the Chargers, he played in 14 of the games. He wasn't the starter there. Eckler was. But it's a guy who averaged, 4 or 5.5 yards a carry. And through his career, he's averaging 5 yards a carry. Not on, so much volume, but not on even like minuscule. Like, he has 200 carries in his whole career, which, again, not a super big number, right? If you're a starting running back, you're probably getting that in a season, but he's got 1,000 yards on those 200 carries. So, like, I'm kind of shocked that he was let go of the Chargers, or let go from the Chargers anyway. But no, like, Justin Jackson's a guy that I would absolutely have on my roster, because every time that he's given the chance to succeed, he has, succeeded. Just, I think, about as well as anybody can expect him to. And that's the kind of guy that, I guess just that I want on my team. Age too, he's a little bit older than what Tommy Kennedy is, right? They're both 26, so it's not like we're talking about someone who's 30 years old and is, his best years are behind him. I would absolutely trust Justin Jackson to be on my football team. So even if the Lions don't cut Reynolds, I hope they take 4 and keep Jackson, because I don't see any reason to let him go.
No, I'm with you. I was shocked that Jackson was available. I thought Melvin Gordon, right? Make sure I'm getting the name right. Melvin Gordon was the running back for the Chargers.
Melvin Gordon was on the Broncos.
No, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. No, I know. I'm saying the Chargers. Right. He was a starting running back, and then he had issues, and Eckler kind of took the ball and ran with it. No pun intended. And I thought the reason the Chargers were fine with letting Gordon go was because they had Eckler and Jackson as going to be their 1-2 punch as far as running backs were concerned. So I was really stunned that Jackson was available. I was stoked that we picked him up. And I would love for him to leapfrog Reynolds as well and get that 3rd running back spot. I don't want to see them cut him, because Jackson's a guy who is not going to be on our practice squad. If he doesn't make this team, he's getting picked up by another team in the NFL, because you need running backs, and running backs that show that they at least are competent. Like, I don't see that happening. So I really hope the Lions end up keeping him and do not cut him. I haven't seen a ton out of Reynolds in this preseason. I don't know what his deal is as far as if he felt like he needed to show out this year to make the team, or if he felt that the spot was his for already. But I like what I've seen out of Jackson, and I hope the Lions continue with him
I like what
for the
I've
rest
seen
of the season,
through
for sure.
his entire career. Like, when he gets the ball, he gets yards. I don't understand what else you could ask of the man.
Yeah. Okay, and then one last player who had a pretty explosive preseason this past week is Maurice Alexander. Kickoff return for 61 yards, and the very next one for 45 yards. Put the Lions in great position. Special teamer who can also play a little bit on the offense with the Lions. Do you think he did enough in this game to solidify his spot for the Lions, at least on the special
probably
teams?
not, because you're asking him to be the kick returner? And I doubt that happens.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know off the top of my head who would be the Lions kick returner, but I don't know that, if you play Madden, I think it's Igwebuike who is the kick returner in the video game. Anyway, again, I just don't think so. I think it's somebody that they could keep on the roster, to make the initial 53 and then kind of test it out, whether it's in games or just in practice to see who the best kick returner is, because you don't necessarily have to be a great football player to make the roster if you're an elite kick returner, or not even elite, even if you're just good. That's a valuable enough skill, in and of itself, to justify a spot on a 53-man NFL team. So I think I would still give him the opportunity, because I don't think kick returns, long kick returns like that are accidents, especially when you have two of them in a game. So there is something there. If he lays an egg in the third preseason game or fumbles once, that's probably it, right? But he still has another preseason game to go, and if he can continue to show promise as a kick returner, yeah, absolutely, he's somebody who I would keep on the roster and just make him until he's not the kick returner. That's when you can cut him. But if you're still not sure, it makes sense to keep him, because I know special teams is something that every team, but the Lions, because they've been, so bad at it in recent years. Special teams is something that they really want to hammer down and be one of the better teams in the NFL at.
Man, pro sports is rough.
If you're
One
already on that
fumble
bubble,
is going to get you cut. You just had 100-plus yards and it's rough. All right, then the quarterbacks, David Blough, Tim Boyle. David Blough had a nice end of the first half, ran the quick drill and got the touchdown. His time expired at halftime to, tie it up at 13 going into the half. Boyle looked pretty decent in the second half. They both had their own issues and struggles. Blough seems to move the ball pretty well between the 20s. Getting into that end zone is a little bit more difficult for him. Boyle, they like his arm strength, but he doesn't have the athleticism to escape the pocket the way Blough does. And that's kind of just been what we've seen the last couple of years now, where it's been pretty set that Blough was 2, Boyle is 3. Are we going to see that again this year, you think? Or are we actually going to be seeing one of these quarterbacks cut loose in favor of
so I think you could see one of them cut loose for a replacement. What I don't think will happen is the Lions just cut one and then they only carry 2 quarterbacks into the regular season, like I've seen some people mention. That I don't understand. I think they'd keep all 3 of these guys before they did that. But if a replacement came available and they cut one because they thought, another guy was better or whatever, that part would make sense to me. I don't know. Obviously, these guys would have the edge over any replacement that they want to bring in because they were all here last year. So they know the offense and they know the terminology, all of that, and they all got, some playing time last year as well. So they have in-game experience kind of when it matters. I expect them to keep all 3. I don't think they'll make any replacements, really, for the sole fact that, they know if Jared Goff goes down, they're probably going to be pretty bad anyway. Now, if they can get their hands on a definitely better number 2, right? We talked about Mason Rudolph before. Not that I think one of these guys will be available, but if Trace McSorley, who is on the Cardinals, and you see him in their preseason games, or Tyler Huntley or somebody like that, the backup for the Ravens, who we've seen in the preseason, and who I think, while not great, is a definite upgrade over Blough or Boyle, then I could see them making that swing. But if they're not going to upgrade quarterback number 2, then I don't think they'll make any moves for quarterback number 3. Does that make sense? If they're going to upgrade it, it's going to be for the guy who's directly behind Goff. It's not going to be for the third string guy.
Okay, now if you had to keep one of them, you knew someone else was coming in to replace one of them. Which
I
one
think
would
I'd
you
rather keep Boyle. I think
Boyle?
he's just better than what Blough is, even if it's only marginal. That's that's it. Not that I like what I've seen from either of them, I guess, but I think Blough is a little bit better than Boyle, or Boyle is a little bit better than Blough. Sorry.
All right, and we're recording on Monday, so tomorrow, Tuesday, the third episode of Hard Knocks comes out. We're going to definitely be seeing some of this joint practice with the Colts as well as the game with the Colts. A lot of talk this past week has been about Malcolm Rodriguez. And in the game itself, you look at the stat box, not much to look at. Two tackles, one solo. Doesn't look like he was that active. We know he was more active than that. But for all the hype of what he's doing in practice and the possibility of him taking a starting spot as a linebacker, a game with two tackles doesn't sound like it's enough.
Well, enough to what? Enough to start? Or because it seems, like it certainly seems like he's making the teams.
Continue to scare into the veterans. And oh no, I know that. I'm not saying he's not making the team, but enough to put the scare into these other veteran linebackers as far as taking one of their
none
spots.
of these other guys are playing any good though. Like we saw it, so I don't know. The Lions seem, they weren't playing their starters anyway, but I would imagine he's a more solidified spot than like Jared Davis. It seems like pretty much he would start, or like everyone except maybe Anzalone should be scared of him, because I think Anzalone probably starts no matter what. Not that he's great, he's just definitely one of like the two best linebackers on the Lions, which is pretty sad. He's probably the best linebacker until we can see what Rodriguez can actually do when the games matter. But I mean, anytime that he's out there making plays, I think he had like a nice pass breakup too. It doesn't like go in the stat sheet as a tackle, but it's a pass breakup or a deflection or whatever you want to say. So like he's still making plays out there. And if I'm a veteran, you probably are a little bit scared, because just by the nature of being a 6th-round pick, and his signing bonus was whatever he said it was, $25,000. Maybe it wasn't that quite that little, but it was not a lot compared to what we heard Aiden Hutchinson say. He definitely just has more hunger in him than any of these veteran linebackers, because these are guys who have probably already been paid. They've not even huge contracts, but certainly enough to live out the rest of your life. If they've been in the NFL for 5 years and got a second contract, they're certainly millionaires at this point. And Malcolm Rodriguez is not, and he would obviously like to be. So I think just from the fact that we know the coaches like him, and we know that he is probably going to play harder than they will, because he just wants it, right? He's coming in. He still has, something to prove and an entire career ahead of him, and I'm sure he thinks he can be the next Ray Lewis or Brian Urlacher or whatever. So yeah, if I'm a veteran, I would still be looking over my shoulder for Malcolm Rodriguez.
Well, we have episode 3 Hard Knocks coming up tomorrow. Today, for you guys who are watching this when it publishes on Tuesday. Obviously, we will have our thoughts after we've seen what they have, what HBO and them have for us upcoming.
Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a